everybody, and welcome into a different edition of The Rundown, a little post-game action following South Carolina's game against Troy yesterday. Usually we are filming this at the stadium right after the game. It is up the night of the game. But because I was at the Citadel yesterday at the Military Classic of the South, watching the Citadel play BMI, Wes is here today instead of Colin. So I don't know who you prefer. Wes, after this, people are going to have to comment down below whether they like you or Colin on The Rundown.
We'll have a vote.
Yeah, we'll have a vote, but we're back here for another edition. And Wes, you were at the game yesterday, so just broadly, generally, what were your takeaways from South Carolina's victory over Troy yesterday?
Honestly, one of the weirdest games I have ever been to in my life. This game had a little bit of everything, some special teams, great plays with a blocked punt, some special teams, not so great plays with a muffed punt. Of course, the weirdest play maybe many of you have ever seen with a fumble, then a recovery, then another fumble, then what looks like a touchdown that ends up being a touchback for Troy because South Carolina defender Jamar Brown, who's sort of apologized on Twitter for it, just threw the ball out a half yard short of the goal line. You got a pick six for the defense. So that would have been two defensive scores, really should have been two defensive scores for South Carolina. Some penalties. Still a really lack of a true running game for South Carolina. But, you say it all the time for the Gamecocks. It beats the alternative of a loss. And Shane Beamer said it took, 40 years off of his lifespan. So I think a lot of South Carolina fans probably were in the stands or at home watching, felt the exact same way, Kendall.
It's probably a good thing that I wasn't at the game yesterday because I think I would have started to develop those 11 wrinkle lines in between my eyebrows, maybe up on my forehead. So I think I missed a good one if I had to pick one so far this season. But you talked there, Wes, about the offense, about the run game struggling once again. What were your impressions of the offense yesterday? What was still struggling for the Gamecocks? And then what were some points of progress maybe?
I thought the first drive of the game was maybe their best drive of the season as far as doing some, giving the opponent some different looks, spreading the ball around to different guys. The tight ends caught the ball a bit more. There were more targets to those guys. I thought they kind of turned Luke Doty loose and let him throw the ball around, which was a nice sign. As much as this offensive staff at times has had to hear it from the fans and the media, the progress of Luke Doty as a passer has been very apparent to me. So I think there were signs of progress. Now, they would have loved to have punched it in instead of having to kick a field goal. And really, that was like a microcosm of the game. I thought South Carolina moved the football pretty well throughout the day. But at times we're having to settle for either going for it on fourth down or settling for kicking a field goal as opposed to punching it in. And that goes back to the running game, or lack of a running game. They were able to mix some things in there. They got the ball to Josh Vann on a couple of reverse type plays, misdirection. They did some quick passing out to Juju McDowell that was successful. So you could tell they were kind of trying to get some things going to maybe loosen up your more traditional running game. But then when they were trying to run the ball up the middle, still issues there. And that's something that, South Carolina we keep saying it. It's like a broken record, but ultimately they're going to need to find some ways to run the football. I do credit the staff for, again, spreading the ball around a little bit better, showing those signs of life. They just kept kind of having little issues, shooting themselves in the foot, some penalties here or there that kept this from actually being a much more complete performance.
When we talk about the offense, we always seem to talk about running backs or Luke Doty or wide receivers. We don't always talk about Parker White, though, and I feel like he is a total unsung hero of the South Carolina Gamecocks team. Yesterday, the final drive of the game resulted in a Parker White field goal to kind of put it away for the Gamecocks. So for US, I'm sure he's definitely a difference maker, one of those players on the team that always is consistent. But who are some of those other players for South Carolina who have showed out this season so far and proven consistently that they are a difference maker for this team?
Yeah, Parker White may be the most consistent player on this roster, and I think worth pointing out, it seems like he's not mentioned yet in the same terms of a Ryan Suckup and Elliott Fry, some of the best kickers in program history. To me, Parker White is already there. Go ahead, stamp Parker White in as being one of the best kickers in this program's history. it was kind of interesting, Kendall, in the stadium when he's kicking this field goal, which really is the difference at the moment between a two-score game and the game essentially being over, or Troy getting the ball back in a 6-point game with a chance to go defeat South Carolina and, make this big upset. You really didn't even feel nervous energy in the stadium because I think everybody just knew and assumed Parker White was going to knock it through, and he did. So he had 3 more field goals. Just very, very great start to the season for him. But I would say Jalen Foster, who had another great game at safety, what a great story for him. Former walk-on, has worked really, really hard to put himself in this position, taking full advantage. Clayton White, the defensive staff, have done an excellent job with him. And then J.J. Enagbare, I think he's always been good for South Carolina since he got here. I feel like he's taken his play to another level. I think he is playing his way into a high NFL draft pick position. And, we've seen that for South Carolina. They've had really good defensive linemen over the last decade or so. I think he is the next in line, the next high draft pick for South Carolina at that position. So, yeah, it hasn't always been pretty across the board. We all know that. But like you said, let's give credit where it's due to some of these guys who are really not only having big games, but just are consistently performing for South Carolina.
So yesterday's game got a little bit touch and go for a little scary. South Carolina just winning 23-14. But in terms of the rest of the season, how did the game yesterday maybe influence your outlook for these upcoming games for South Carolina?
Yeah, I will say this. I think South Carolina fans out there probably would have liked to see South Carolina be able to run the football a little bit more. And I think they would have liked to see South Carolina stop the run a little bit better as well. It wasn't that Troy went up and down the field on this defense by any means, but Troy had struggled to run the football, something we talked about, I believe, coming in on the Before the Sandstorm show. And, they had some success on the ground. So, I think this is still a work in progress for South Carolina. The big thing is, though, did you see what Tennessee did to Missouri?
I
62-24. Like, who saw that coming? You look, Missouri was a team that was toe-to-toe with Kentucky, who South Carolina obviously had a close game with. Kentucky beats Florida on Saturday. Huge win for them. So I don't know if we quite know what this pecking order is yet in the East below, obviously, Georgia at the top. So this is a massive game. I just looked. It opened up. Vegas has Tennessee as a 12-point favorite in this game. It's already slid a little bit down to Tennessee by 10. But still, Vegas sees this as like a double-digit favorite situation for Tennessee. So South Carolina is going to be a pretty big underdog again. It is a winnable game, but it's going to take a lot to go South Carolina's way. I still go back, it's going to be a broken record. People are tired of talking about the running game, but get these backs, these really talented running backs, some room to run has to be the key this week, moving forward the entire season, because there are still, you want to get really big picture. Texas A&M hasn't really looked great either. So Missouri, obviously, we just talked about, they got blown out. There are more games on the schedule that could kind of be toss-up games if South Carolina can find its footing on offense. So that's honestly going to be the remaining big story for the final, little over half of this season.
Well, we'll have all of the updates as South Carolina goes through the week, going on to play Tennessee on the road at Neyland Stadium this upcoming Saturday. But Wes, thank you so much for filling in on the Rundown virtual edition. It was a little bit different this week, but you did a good job, and we'll have to see what people think. Wes,
vote for Wes. Vote for Wes.
Vote for Wes 2021. No, I can't endorse anybody, I guess. I just have to be like Switzerland, completely neutral. But thank you, everybody. Exactly. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into another edition of The Rundown. Be sure to subscribe to GamecockCentral.com, and we will see you back here soon.